I want to ask you about the referendum question, because you guys were first out of the gate with the referendum question, and now the rules for referendum have been changed. Tell us about your question. Tell us what comes next.
Okay, well, our question quite simply is, do you agree that Alberta shall become a sovereign country and cease to be a province of Canada, right? Couldn't be any clearer than that. The reason the question is framed that way is that it's a constitutional question that complies strictly with Section 1, Sub 3 of the Clarity Act, okay? Which says that in order for a referendum question on secession to be clear, it has to both state that the province wishes to cease being a province of Canada and wishes to become an independent country. So our province, our question covers off both of those points as required by the Clarity Act. And, we'll be submitting that question in fairly short order to our member of parliament to be tabled, in Parliament in Ottawa. So our question is a constitutional question, complies with the requirements of the Clarity Act. As some people may know, there's a kind of a weird political actor running around Alberta by the name of Thomas Lukaszuk, something like that, whatever.
Thomas Lukaszuk just won't go away.
There we go. So it's not Lukaszuk. That's what I thought. How I thought it was.
Do you know what?
Anyway.
Say his name wrong. I don't care. I'm sure it irritates him.
But anyway, Little Tommy, let's just call him Little Tommy, has filed a phony petition and that says, do you agree that Alberta should remain in Canada? And of course, I was laughing with my good friend Keith Wilson recently because Keith said, yeah, I want to submit a referendum question. And he says, my question is going to be, do you agree that Alberta should still be called Alberta? Right? It basically has the same legal effect as Little Tommy's question. And as far as it goes, that's the problem with Little Tommy's program, right? It's a phony question that basically seeks to maintain the status quo. Obviously, Elections Alberta has not recognized it as a constitutional question. My understanding is that they've recognized it as a non-binding policy question, right? Which, has little or no effect from a legal perspective. And in fact, because it's a non-binding policy question, various legislative committees in the government of Alberta could actually refuse to put it on a ballot because it's completely meaningless in the broader scheme of things. But what I think Little Tommy and his little pals I think they call themselves Forever Canada, are trying to do is their interpretation of and I think it's the old act that they were looking at, not the new act, but their interpretation is if they bring a question and they fail on the question to get the signatures that they require, they think that will then prevent any question on that subject from ever being asked again for the next 5 years. So that's his whole plan, is to have this phony referendum question. They're going to send around phony canvassers. They're going to make an attempt to get the 300,000 signatures they require. And then when they fail, they're going to say that a real question on whether or not Alberta should be an independent country and cease to be a province of Canada will not be able to proceed for another 5 years. So it's just a game that they're playing. It's a silly game. It's a distraction. It's exactly what you'd expect from, Little Tommy. I mean, he doesn't like being out of the public eye. When he's not doing that now, apparently he's very busy trying to bring Sharia law to Alberta. I don't know if you're aware of that, but he's started a company to provide quote unquote halal mortgages and has been lobbying the Alberta government to bring Sharia law into, Alberta by statute so that they can have these so-called halal mortgages, that comply with Sharia law. I mean, that's what he does in his spare time. So who knows? I mean, maybe the reason Little Tommy thinks that, we need to keep Alberta in Canada is that they're more likely to be able to invoke Sharia law in Alberta, if we're part of Canada as opposed to not. I don't know what his motivations are, but, quite frankly, I think it's pretty silly. I mean, the guy grew up in a communist country, comes to Canada and basically loves the fact that Canada's become a communist country, and he wants to make sure that his fellow Albertans continue to live under communist rule in Alberta, just like he grew up when he was a little boy. The whole, the whole thing, quite frankly, is I think is disgusting, and we don't see it as being a real issue or problem for us going forward, other than it's a nuisance, and it's generated it's generated discussion in and around the issue. Right. I guess we had a press conference recently, and the CBC reporter, that's all she wanted to do was aggressively ask questions about little Tommy's petition. And of course, when we pointed out, when we pointed out to her as well, that the Elections Alberta Act, a new act, specifically contemplates, being able to have, more than one, citizens initiative petition question going at a time, and pointed out that our question was substantially different than little Tommy's, even though, he's tried to make it so that it's ostensibly on the same subject when it's not. Our petition is for Alberta to become a country. So remain in Canada has nothing to do with whether we become a country or not, right? So anyway, we're dealing with it. It's just, it's more of an irritant than anything else. And, obviously there's a lot of people just wish that, that little Tommy would move back to Poland or some other communist country where he feels more comfortable as opposed to staying in Alberta. But that's where we're at.
Honestly, I hope Thomas Lukaszuk never shuts up, because he is a reminder of the old progressive conservatives that drifted so far left that they delivered us to the NDP for 4 years and destroyed a generation of investment in Alberta. He was one of the architects of that. And I'm glad that he's reminding people to think about whether or not, under the current deal, a 2025 Alberta would actually join Canadian Confederation. That's the flip side of his little nuisance question. And I think it's just going to blow up in his face.
Well, who in their right mind, like if Alberta was, completely independent, we had the lowest taxes and lowest regulatory burden of any jurisdiction in North America, our economy was thriving, everybody here was, lived in a world where we didn't have to pay any income tax anymore, and along came Canada and said, hey, we'd like you to join our country. And the conditions are, over half of your income is now going to go towards all kinds of taxes that we impose. We're going to arbitrarily impose regulations on you whenever we want, including shutting down your industry, shutting down your businesses, taking away property that you own, including your firearms, taxing the equity in your houses, destroying your children by legalizing, drugs that shouldn't be legalized without, on any planet, et cetera, right? What would the answer be? It wouldn't be no. It would be hell no. Like, are you silly? Just run away. Like, go away. We want nothing to do with you. You're stupid, right? But I mean, why? So why do people want to stay in this country? Like, it's, quite frankly, the upside, and that's the other thing with little Tommy is that, you notice that he never talks about the benefits of staying in Canada. Right? It's just, oh, well, I'm loyal. Well, you know what? I have a, standard poodle, and my standard poodle is really loyal too, but I don't want I don't want my dog running the country. What's loyalty? That's, so what? Loyal to what? Loyal to, people that declare the War Measures Act against us? Loyal to people that foolishly think that taxing us to death is going to change the weather? Loyal to people that, start phony trade wars with our largest trading partner. And then when that doesn't go well for them, they're going to threaten to shut down Alberta Oil, right. Et cetera, et cetera. Like, what loyalty do we owe, this entity called Canada? I mean, it's effectively become Canadistan. It's not the country that it was when we grew up or when I grew up. And that's what we want to take Alberta back to. We want to take Alberta back to those original Canadian values. We want to live in a country where we have low taxes, where we have low regulations, where the government stays the hell out of your life. Not every time you turn around, some bureaucrat telling you how to live, when you could leave your home, how much, how much fuel you're allowed to burn, what kind of car you can drive. I mean, what kind of, who wants to live in that country? I don't want to live in that country.
Help us continue our work by subscribing and becoming a Rebel News Plus member today, right here on the page. Go to rebelnewsplus.com. Members get instant access to all of our shows, invitations to exclusive events, and access to our premium content like live event footage and documentaries you won't see anywhere else. Only Rebel News Plus members can join the conversation by participating in the comments section of our new website. That way you can have your say too. More than anything, though, you'll be able to take pride in supporting real, honest journalism, and you'll help our talented team continue to do the work to push back on the establishment. We really can use your help. We need it, in fact. So thank you, and enjoy Rebel News Plus.